Okay, so welcome to today's class, everybody. It's still Victor, right? Victor Cup, and today we are going to be looking at the topic conditional statements, arrays, and loops. Okay, and I know we touched a bit on this in one of our previous classes where we talked about if statements and else. And then we also talked about variables there, right? So, um, so let's start with conditional statements, right? Now, when you're writing your program, most times you don't want that program to just run from beginning to the end, like linearly, like in a linear fashion from top to the bottom of the program. You want to make it possible for, now I'm explaining conditional statements. You want to make it possible for your program to have branches or make certain actions based on a condition, right? It's more like, so let me give you a real life example. Your moms must have uh sent you on an errand before, or send you on an errand, and then they tell you, when you go to this shop, if you see no Maggie, buy it. If you don't see no, then if they have star, you buy. If they don't have no and they don't have star, you move to the other shop that is after this one. Then you do the same process, right? Now, that is your mom or whoever your has given you that instruction. That person is giving you a conditional statement or a conditional or an instruction that has a condition with it. If you go here and this happens, do this. Else, if this happens, do this. And it's an integral part of our life. Conditions. If you come back home and there's no light, you on your gen. If there's light, then you don't on your gen. You get? So it's something that is not new, something that happens. Okay, right. And we are going to see how we can write those kind of statements with JavaScript, right? Because of course you should also be able to tell your code what to do and what not to do at a particular time. Okay, and then with conditional statements, you have if, else statements, then you have switch, right? You have if and else statements, and then you have switch. And we are going to see the difference between or what if and else statements can do, and what switch and case statements can do, and what makes them different and unique in their way. Okay. Then also we are going to look at arrays. What are arrays? Why are they a big topic in JavaScript? And then while looking at arrays, we also look at how we can traverse an array and also modify an array. So modifying an array would be like adding a value or an element to an array, removing an element from an array, and other manipulations, right? Maybe logging out each value of an array, and maybe we might also do nested arrays. Let's just see how it's going to go. Then we are also going to look at loops, okay? And we've encountered loops in our life, in our day-to-day activities. So let me give an example. If you're walking from your house to a shop, you first put your left, maybe your left leg first, then your right leg, then your left leg, then your right leg. You keep making that step, right? Until you reach that shop. So what you did with your leg there is you're looping your steps. You don't just make one step and that step takes you to the shop. Okay, you make multiple steps, right? And then those multiple steps sum up to what takes you from your house to your shop or to the shop you want to buy whatever you want to buy from. Okay, so that's loop. So loop is just simply repetition. You get maybe doing something multiple times. Maybe for example, you're mixing you're trying to make tea. You've put your milk, you put sugar, you've put your chocolate, you put water, then you start turning it. That's stirring. You see that as you're turning it, you're coming back to the same position, but you're doing the same thing over and over again as you're trying to mix the the tea, right? As you're trying to mix to make the ingredients dissolve inside the water. You're turning it. That turning is also a loop because you keep doing it multiple. You don't just turn once and then it mix. You do it multiple times till it mixes together. So those are like real life examples of when we've done loops. So you see that programming is highly relatable to the things of life, actually, right? So those are the things we are going to look at in today's class. So let's head over to VS Code, and you can also code along with me if you want, but the most important thing is you should look at what I have done and then understand it before you try it. Okay? Don't just try what I want to do like without understanding the concept or the concept I'm trying to explain. So let's head over to VS Code and then I'm going to start with conditional statements to show you what I mean. Okay, so let's head over there. Okay, I have to stop sharing to share again. I hope you guys can see my VS Code. Hope you guys can see it. Indicate in the comments. Okay, beautiful. Okay, cool. Now we have, of course, for people that don't know how I got here, I just created, in my documents folder, I created a file called scripts.js, right? And then that scripts.js, because it ends with .js, I can execute it with Node. And if you've not installed Node, remember that there's a way to actually install it. You by going to, I think that's just search Node.js on your Google. The first link that comes up should be the official Node.js link. Then you can actually go there and download the LTS version, which is the long-term support version of Node.js and install it. Or you can download the latest version. I think the latest version is even better to download than the LTS, right? Okay. So we talked about conditional statements, and um before we talk about conditional statement, let's talk about comparison operators. We have greater than, we have less than. Sorry, this is greater than. Sorry, this is less than. This is greater than or equal to. Also have less than or equal to. Have not equal to. You have not equivalent to. And I'll tell you the difference between both of these two. Okay. We have equal to, you have equivalent to, is not equivalent to. Sorry, this is equivalent to. Sorry. Okay, so how do we use these comparisons? Right. How do we use them? Now, let's see. Um, now you mostly use these ones, right? The ones that have the greater than or greater than or equals to, like these ones, this set, when you're comparing numbers. Okay, when you're comparing numbers. So, for example, if we say is it true that 5 is greater than 2? Right? This is going to log out a true for us. And okay, so someone has a question. He's saying, sir, I have a question. When programming, if you want to do the equal to sign, it will be double. Okay, so now there's a difference between assigning a variable or assigning a value to a variable and then the equals to sign. Look, this one I say, for example, I say const A is equals to 200. This is called, what you've done here is you've declared a value and assigned, or you've declared a variable and assigned a value at the same time. You can do this individually. Maybe you want to say, let, for example, or const B like this, and then you say B should be equals to maybe hello. This first line here is you declaring a variable. At this point, this B, the value of B is undefined. Which means it doesn't have any value in it. Then when you say B is equals to hello, you've assigned B, variable B, a value. Now, using single equals to means you're assigning a value to a variable. The value here is 200 and the variable name is A. Here in B, the variable name and the value is hello and the variable name is B. Okay, so you're assigning a value to the variable B and the value is hello. The same thing here, you're assigning 200 to the variable A. Okay, so this is different from using double equals to. Double equals to means you want to compare two values. You want to compare two values and then you're using that double equals to check if those values are equal. Okay, so Onyedikachi Johnson, I hope I have made that clear to you. Is it clear now to you? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so this is worthy of knowing. Okay, you need to know this. Have it at the back of your hand or at the tip of your fingers, right? Now, we want to run this code, and the simple way to run it is to come here and click terminal, and then you click on new terminal. So that's going to present you with that screen there where you have the terminal running. Then, of course, you can then say npm, or sorry, did I say npm? Node. Okay, first of all, before you even do that, we should check where we are. I'm not in the document folder, so I have to change my directory to document folder. So you'd say cd to documents, enter. So now I'm in documents, and I can then execute this. So I would say node scripts. I could add the .js, or I will not. If I don't add the .js, node is going to automatically look for a JS file. That's a file that ends with JS, and then execute it. So you see, it's true that 5 is greater than 2. Is 5 less than 2? That would give me a false. That would give me a false. Okay. So you can use this to compare numbers. So if you want to know that if your age, maybe on a form, you want to know if a user's age is less than 18. Maybe the user's age, maybe you say the const age. Age is equals to 12. Age is equals to 12, for example. You'd say if age, or is age less than 18. So if the age is less than 18, it means the person isn't an adult. If the person is less than the adult considered age, the age that is considered to, that person is considered to be an adult. So we would say node index, or not script, sorry. So it's true that the person's age is less than 18, but at this point, you don't just want to you don't just want to return true to the user, or to you don't want to display true or false to that person, right? So, or you don't want to get the result of just true. You want to be able to say, okay, if the person is less than 18, we should log out that this person, you're not an adult, or you're not allowed to do this or do that, right? Or you're not allowed to access this information. So that's where you have conditional statements. You can say, if the person's age is less than 18, then you tell the person console.log. You tell the person you are less than the required age. Okay, you are less than the required age. But then if the person, okay, so now let's do that. If the person is less than 18, right? Let's clear our terminal. Then let's come and write node script. So you see, the person's age is less than 18. So let's imagine that probably there was a form someone was filling. And then when the person clicks submit, you then try to check this. This is similar to what you want to write. If the person's age is less than 18, right? Although they are based there, if you're talking about a production level project, there are libraries you can use to check this kind of validations, or run this kind of validations. But for now, I'm saying, so if age is less than 18, of course you are less than the required age, right? But then what if the person is like 25, not 1 to 5? 25, nothing will be printed out. And let's say you actually want to print out something if the person is higher than uh, the required age, at least, right? So if you want to do that, you would say else. So now, before we add the else statement, if statement is only going to execute if this value here resolves to true. As far as whatever you're comparing there resolves to a true, is going to respond with true. Okay, but then if whatever you're doing here resolves to false, then that's when the else would come up, right? So if you wanted that, oh, if the person is higher than the age, which means this is going to become false, then you now say else. Console.log you are. So let's clear this. So now we see that the person is 25 and 25 is greater than 18. So since 25 is greater than 18, this will resolve to a false. And since this is false, we would rather, it would print you are eligible, right? So you see, that's how, okay. Okay, so Martins, you're saying I should recap, right? So the important thing to take away in this class for conditional statements is that your if block of code is only going to execute if and only if whatever you're comparing here resolves to true, right? For example, if the age is less than 18, maybe like 14, is 14 less than 18? True, 14 is less than 18. So as far as the comparison here resolves to a true, your if block of code is what is going to be executed. As far as, so this if is going to be executed, which means the else is not even going to be executed at all. And the flow of your code is going to continue. It will resolve this, it would execute this block of code, then it will just continue the statements down like that. Okay, but then if what you're comparing here resolves to a false, for example, now you're checking is 20 less than 18. 20 is not less than 18, so this will now resolve to a false. And once that resolves to a false, this is now going to be executed, your else block of code, right? Your else block of code is going to be executed. The way these brackets or these curly braces are used to demarcate code blocks. So this is a code block. This is another code block. This is a code block also. Okay. So you see, that's how that works. So what if we were doing something like let me give a second example. What if we're doing something like grading in terms of like your school grading? For example, from 80 to 100 is A, from this to that is B, from that to that is C, from anything less than this is so and so. Okay, so let's try that. So let's see how we can actually see that in action. Okay, Sorry about that. So if we did cons, okay, before I even move on, Martins, are you cleared? Does it make sense? Do you understand? Okay. Um, I hope you guys can hear me clearly. Okay, so Martins, hope that I'll just keep that at the top for you to see while I I continue. Okay. Now let's say score is equals to, for example, 80. Now there is another statement called else if, right? So let me give you a scenario or an example. So in your school, everybody's school, you say, okay, if you are from 80 to 100, maybe that will be an A. If you are from maybe 70 to 80, that will be a B. Then if you are from maybe 50 to 70, I'm just giving an example, that will be C. So you see that there are multiple statements, right? There are multiple statements that will validate that your score for each subject. Okay. So how do we code such a thing? For example, you'd say, now, this is how I would want to do it, right? First of all, I will check if the score is greater than 100, which means it's actually, let's say 101, 102. Has any of you scored like 101 over 100 before? Even if you answered all the questions correctly, have you? If you have, I would be surprised. So if your score is greater than 100 or your score is less than your score is less than 0, which means you scored -1. Has anybody scored -1 before in their exams? Like it means you're owing the lecturer a score, and then maybe the next semester or the next term you will now pay that score. Maybe if you have like -10, you're owing that particular person. The next semester, if you have like 60, they will now remove the 10 and then give you 50. Well, I've seen that happen before though. So if that is the case, you want to say console.log invalid score, because you're not supposed to score above 100 and or score below 0. Now you now say else if score is greater than or equals to 80 and the same score. Okay, and I would also show you what this is doing. Okay, that's another topic. So let's pause and then let me show you what that means. Okay. Let me just comment this. Let me comment that and then explain what those operators are. So now let's take, for example, you want to compare two things or two conditions. Okay. So let's take, for example, let me just use what you guys can relate with easily. If true and true, if you have true and true, in fact, I'm sure you guys have done something related to truth table. If you remember what truth table is, or logic gates in your computer science in your secondary school, or truth table in mathematics, you would know that when you're using and, right? Like you're saying two things have to be true for you to have an output of true. For example, if I say if true and true, you should have a result of true. So if I clear and then try to run this, okay, you see that this returns a true. But what if one of the value becomes false? Okay, if even one of the value becomes false, then you see that we have a false here. Okay, so now this is not how you're going to use this. Maybe you're going to compare two things. You can say is 5 equals to 5 and 3 is greater than 1. First, 5 equals to 5 is true, and 3 greater than 1 is true. So since these two are actually true, then the result is going to be a true. Okay, so if we run it again, you see that you have a true because the two, or even you can even do more. You can say and 1 should be less than 100. Of course, 1 is less than 100. So, okay. So if you do that and you run it again, it's true because the conditions, all the conditions you're trying to compare resolves to a true. If even any one of these conditions resolves to false, then what you're going to be getting is a false. So this and sign states that whatever you're comparing, whatever conditions you're comparing, all have to resolve to true for you to get a true as a result. For example, if I check is it true that 1 is greater than 100? It's false that 1 is greater than 100. So 5 is equals to 5, which is true. 3 is greater than 1, which is true, but it's false that 1 is greater than 100. So if we try to run that, you see that we have a false because of just this statement, right, being false. That's why we are actually having a false. But if we saw that once we have all of the statements we are comparing being true, a result of true would be what we would get. Okay, I hope you guys are following. Is there anybody that has a question? Anybody that has a question, or you don't understand? Okay, you guys are following. That's good. All right. So that's for and. Then we have or. So okay. Johnson, you said you're lost. Okay, so where are you? Where is it? Where did you get lost from? At what point did you get confused? Okay, this last explanation. So this last explanation, anywhere you're using and in your comparison, just know that whatever you're comparing, so these are what you're comparing. You're comparing okay, you're comparing these two, and you're also comparing these two, and you're also comparing these two. Now, the comparison for this and this value has to return true for you to be able to get the result of true as a response. Or in this point, what we are doing is we are console.logging the result of comparing these three expressions. Okay, we are trying to compare these three. Now, I think it's because I'm actually doing 3. Let me make it 2. I'm comparing if if 5 is equal to 5 and 3 is greater than 1. This has to be true, and this has to also be true for you to have a true as a response, or for you to have a true as a result of comparing this and this, and also comparing this two. Okay? If either this one or either of these comparisons, if they become false, then you have a false here as a response. So let me clear this. Okay, now the double AND helps you to chain more comparisons, but using the AND logic for them. Okay, so you can compare this and also have another comparison that you want to. It's more like saying if you're logged in and you are an admin, you should be able to do something. But if you're logged in and you're not an admin, you should not be able to do that thing. Or if you're not logged in, but you're an admin, you should not still also be able to do that thing. So it's more like saying every condition has to be true. Every condition you're trying to compare has to be true before you can get a true response or a true result. So if I do node script.js, you now see that I have a true because these two are actually those two are actually what's it being called? They resolve to a true. Okay, but then if either of these results to a false, for example, me comparing is 3 equals to 1, this is going to resolve to a false. Or either of them, if they resolve to a false, right, then the result I'm going to get here is going to be a false. Going to be a false because although this one is true, but since this one is false, right, and the AND logic states that whatever you're trying to compare, right? Well, in fact, let me write the logic here for you guys to understand it. So you have input, you have input, maybe I'll call this input 2, I'll call this input 1, then I'll call this result. Okay, so if input 1 is true, this is the truth table, the AND truth table. And then input 2 is true. Then the result here is going to be true. If your input 1 is false, your input 2 is true. What you would have here is false. Okay? If your input 1 is true, then your input 2 is false. Your result will be false. And of course, if you have a false and you have a false here, your result will also be false. So the only time you have a true, this is for your AND logic. Your AND logic. Or in brackets. using this AND operator. Actually, the name of this thing is called ampersand, not AND, but we know it as AND popularly. Okay, so we are using this. So you're saying, so what happens is all your inputs have to, even if you have 3 inputs, all the 3 inputs have to be true for you to have a result of true. If any input is false, then your result is going to be false. Okay, now if you use or, so now Isaac Emmanuel, what you're asking is, if you're using this pipe symbol, where is it? This pipe symbol. Now this pipe symbol is used to signify an or. So the or means that either what you're comparing on the left or what you're comparing on the right has to be true for you to have a true output. So now if we use or here, this is going to resolve to true because at least we have one true statement here. At least 5 is equals to 5. This is true, although this is false. But since we are using or will say, since we have at least one true statement in what we are comparing, then the result is going to be a true. So if we clear this, and then we come and run that, you see, we have a true here. So Emmanuel, I hope Isaac Emmanuel have cleared you on that, right? Okay. So if we want to draw the table for the truth table or logic table for or, this would be using or logic or logic, yes. That's for your double pipe symbol. Then we'll do the same thing here. We'll say input 1, input 2, then we have results. Okay. So if you have true here, and then you have a true here, of course, your result will be true. If you have a true here, you have a true here, you have a false. Okay, sorry. If you have a true here and you have a false here, you have a true as a result. If you have true as your first input, and then, okay, sorry, if you have a false here, here you have a true, here you still have a true. So this one only becomes false when you have false, then that's when you then have a false. So this is how the OR logic works. So let me bring this down here for us to see clearly. Okay, so that's how this all works. So this one is true, right? But this one now is false. But since at least we have one true, that's an input, that's why we are getting true as a result. But if this was AND that we use, AND states that whatever you're putting, all have to be true for you to have a true response. Okay? Is there anybody that's still confused? Anybody that is still confused? If you are following, just type on the chat, say I'm following. Just say I'm following, so I'll know you're following actually. Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, so Onyedikachi Johnson, you said you have a question about how to set up your terminal. Okay, if you are using Windows, then you need to download what is called Git for Windows or Git Bash. I think it was Git Bash before, but it's now called Git for Windows. When you download it and install, you restart your PC. Then when you restart your PC and you open VS Code, once you open VS Code, you click on you click on terminal. Once you click on terminal, you click on new terminal. Once you click on new terminal, you're going to be presented with something similar to this, but then you click this plus button. No, sorry, you click this arrow down button, and then you look for git bash. You look for the git bash uh, option. Once you select git bash, you should be able to see a terminal that is similar to this. And then if you want to download Gits for Windows, just go on Google, search Gits for Windows. Just search Gits for Windows. Okay. Once you search Gits for Windows, you'll be able to see it. All right. Now I'm happy you guys are following. Okay. Now we've been able to talk about the and the or. Okay, then we have this other one like the not, called the not, which is just an exclamation mark. So this not, or in the negate symbol, not on the negate symbol. This one is used to give the opposite of something. For example, let's see how this negation symbol works. Okay, for example, if you just I don't know why I'm spelling that wrongly, but if you just log true alone, it will still give you true. True is just going to print out true for you. True is just going to print out true. Okay, but then what if you want to give the opposite of true? Like each time you pass true, it should print false. If you pass false, it should print true. You just add the exclamation mark before the what you're doing. Okay. So if we clear the terminal and then we come back and run it, you see that we are passing through here, but it's giving us a false. If we pass false here, it will then give us true. To then give us true. Okay. If you pass false, it gives you true. If you pass true, it gives you false. Short and simple. Now, why would you even need this in the first place? Now, let me give you a classic example. You people used to know of you people know about dark mode and light mode in most apps. You click light mode, it turns dark. You click on dark mode, it turns to light, like it gives you a brighter color, right? That's a toggle. Now, negation symbol is mainly used to give toggle operations. For example, or if you click on this thing, if it is true, change it to false. If you click on that same thing again and it's false, change it to true. It's mainly used for toggling. If you want to create a toggle button, that's something that I should be able to on and off as you're pressing it continuously. Maybe a button that as you're pressing it continuously toggles on and off, on, off, on, off, on, off. You get? You use this negation symbol to do so. And of course, you're not just going to be saying false. You can say something like this. If 5 is greater than 2. So it's true that 5 is greater than 2, but it's supposed to print true. But now this negation symbol will make it print false. So if we run that, it prints false. Actually, 5 is greater than 2, but since this symbol, this negation symbol comes before your comparison, it will give the opposite of the answer, which is giving, that's why you're having this false here. Okay. Martins, what should I go over again? What should I repeat? Okay. So, but apart from that, I hope everybody is following. Okay, this symbol just negates. So it's is a symbol that you use to pass or give back the opposite of a particular um comparison, the opposite of the result of a comparison. For example, I'm comparing 5 and 2. I'm saying uh is it true that 5 is greater than 2? Yeah, it's true that 5 is greater than 2, right? But the negation symbol is going to change true to false. It's like saying anything that I receive, I give the opposite. I I receive the true and I return, I change that true to false and return it. If I receive false, I change that false to true and I return it. It's that simple. Okay, so um let's continue. I hope there is no other question based on this logic. I hope there is no other question. Okay. I hope there's no other question based on all the logics and everything I've explained so far. Any question? Anybody still feeling confused? Now, the logic 5 greater than 2 is true. In fact, see, let me remove this negation symbol, and then let me clear the terminal and run it. It's true, actually. 5 is greater than 2. It's true that 5 is greater than 2. But because I now added this negation statement, these negation statements will turn the true, which is the result of comparing these two, into false, and then send it as a result. Okay. So this symbol just negates, like it just gives the opposite of what it gets. If it gets a true, it gives false. If it gets false, it gives true. Okay, so God's will, there are others, okay, but this is like the basic. There is NAND, NOT, NOR, and the rest, okay? But this is what you're going to, this is the scope of what you're going to learn in this class. We are not going to go into NOT or, sorry, we are not going to go into NOR or NAND and the rest, okay? We're not going to go into that. Okay, so let's come back here to what we were doing before. Okay, so I hope you guys follow. I hope all of you follow. Okay, cool, cool. That's nice. That's nice. Okay, so if it's less than that, okay, if so we said first, if the score is greater than 0, is greater than 100 or is less than 0, invalid score. If your score is from 80 and your score is less than or equals to 100, you should say console.log excellent, else else if it's from 60, if score is greater than or equals to 60 and the score is less than um score is less than score is less than 80. Now, there's a difference between less than and equal to and less than. So what I'm doing here is now is going to check if score is greater than or equals to 60, which means if your score is 60 or is 61 or is 62 upwards till 79, it is going to tell you, it's going to give tell you what. Wait, so sorry, I made this mistake. So I would say if else, if that, okay? Else, if the score is less than, sorry, is greater than or equals to 60, and then the score is less than 80. So this is simply me specifying a range that if your score falls between 60 to 79. Now, 60 to 79, not 60 to 80. Remember that here we are saying 80 to 100. So this is saying 60 to 79. If I put less than or equal to, then there will be an issue because I'm checking for if we have the score of 80. I'm checking if the score is 80. I'm also checking if the score is equals to 80 here. So you should be very careful with when you're doing this. So I'm now saying from 60 to 79, you should say very good. Very good. Else, if the score is greater than or equals to 50, and then the same score is less than 60. So if I don't want to write less than 60, for example, I can say, or the score is less than or equals to 59. Okay, so that's if the score is greater than or equal to 50, but it's less than or equal to 59. Beautiful. But if I don't want to do it that way, I could just say if the score is less than 60, 59 is less than 60. So that's another range. Okay. Right. So here we'll say console.log good. And then we can say else. Or you can say else if the score is less than 50, which is any score that is 49. But we can comfortably remove this because that's the last condition that we want to check. So we can say else, then we should console.log fail. Okay, should console.log fail. So this is saying as far as your score is higher than 100 or your score is less than 0, which means you have like -1, -2 over 100, your score is invalid. But as far as your score falls within the range of 80 to 100, then okay, beautiful. You scored well. Okay, and you did well, excellent. If your score now falls from 60 to 79, very good. If your score falls from 50 to 60, okay, 50 to 59, okay, beautiful, you did well, good. But anything that is less than 50, which is 49. So this is like the base case. As far as your score is not greater than 100 and your score is not less than 0, and your score doesn't fit with any of these other options here, then we should tell you that you've failed. Okay, and let's run this to see how it's going to execute. Okay, let's run it and see how it's going to execute. So Claire, remember that what is our score? Okay, I didn't do that. So let me comment on that. So for people that are thinking, how do I comment so fast? So I use my control and / to toggle between comments and non-comments, to comment and to remove the comments. So control and / in case you're wondering, on VS Code. Okay, beautiful. Now let's run node script.js. You see, excellent, because my score falls within 80 to that, 80 to 100. Let me make it 55, for example. If it's 55, right? Good, because it falls between 50 to 59. 59. If I did 59, to still tell me good, because that falls between the range of 50 to 59. Once it's 60, what would show now would be very good. Very good instead of good. Okay, beautiful. Then if we have something like 40, okay, 40 would show what? Fail. Okay, then let's try. If we have -2, then that should be an invalid score. If we have 105, invalid score. Okay, so this is a way to compare, right? Now this is we specifying a range and what should happen within that range. Now it's not now you can say once it's invalid score, you want to do a whole lot of things inside this block of code. You want to return invalid score, you want to remove the person, you want to log the person out, whatever I want to do. If this condition is true, right, that either of this is true, you can do it inside here. So now this is how if and else state. Now this if, this else, and this else if statement. So you use else if statement to extend your condition. So if you don't just want to have two conditions, okay, when it's true, do this, when it's false, do the other one. Okay, if it's true, do if it's else, if it's false, do else. If you want to have multiple conditions, right, you can then use else if to extend it. I hope you guys are following. I hope everybody's following. Okay, everybody's following up to this point, right? Okay, cool. Now let's look at switch and case. Now the main difference between switch and case is that with switch, you have definite values that you are comparing. You can't use switch to compare ranges. For example, you can't say if the case is between 0 to 100, show that, or like you can't, what we've done now with this if statement, you can't do with switch statements. Martins, you would have to be attentive on this call so that you won't take me back multiple times. Okay, I'm going to go over this quickly. Okay, once you write your if statements, right, this is going to execute, your if is going to execute only, your if statement is going to execute only if, in fact, any of these statements, any of these if or else if statements, they are going to execute only if the value or the condition you're trying to check is true. And it starts from top to execute down. So let's say, for example, if like two else if statements are true, the first one that is true will be the one that will be executed, and that will be all. The other one won't be executed. So it's important to have unique cases you're checking for in your if and else statements. You get okay. Now, if we have that, then else works. Else works only if all the conditions you're trying to check here, right, becomes false. Then that is when else is going to execute. That is if you even have an else statement, that's when it is going to execute. Okay, right? So that's it. All right. So that's how this works. Okay. That's how if and else statement works. Just know that now this else if side is optional. It's not compulsory. It's not by must. All your statements must have else if. You can just write if and you have your else. And it's also not even compulsory to have an else statement. You can just have if alone, and then whatever you want to do, just write it there. Okay. I hope that's clear, Martins. So if you notice, we are comparing ranges here. If this range from here to here, do this. If it range from here to here, do this. That's what we are comparing here. But if you want to compare literal values, right? For example, comparing that the result is equals to, if the score is equals to 80, specifically 80, then do this. That's when you need something like a switch. But the bottom line is whatever you can do with an if statement, you can do with a switch statement. But what you can do with a switch statement, you can do with an if statement. But it's not everything that an if statement can do that your switch statement can do. I hope I have not confused anybody. Okay, in layman terms, what I mean is that what you can do on your if and else, or what you can do on your switch and case statements, you can also do it on your if and else statements. But you see what you can do on your if and else statements is not everything that you can do in your if and else statement that you can now do it on your switch statement. So let's see an example. How do you write a switch statement? So now a classic example will be if you want to greet someone or you want to render a greetings, right? You can maybe based on the day. Okay, let me give an example. So console const day of the week, because day of the week is always specific. Okay, I'll just put it as an empty string here. This is how you write your switch statement. You say switch. Okay, you say switch, and then you have your expression, which is maybe the day of the week, for example. Okay, you say day of the week. And then you now have your cases here. So in the case that this day of the week is equals to Monday, so in the case where the day of the week is Monday, okay, then you want to do something here. You want to say, hello, maybe console.log console.log first day of the week. Okay, then after that, you're going to have a break statement. Then you have more. You could say in the case where day of the week is Tuesday. Sorry, it's Tuesday. Now, you see that we are comparing literal values. We are not comparing a range. Like if it is within from this place to this place, then it should do something. We are not comparing a range. We are comparing literal values. It has to be exactly that value, you see? So we are saying if day of the week, that's if this expression here, which is day of the week, is Monday, then this is what will happen. Then this break will not allow this statement after executing this case where it's Monday. It will not allow that statement to continue to run. Okay. So you say that's Monday, then you now come and say console dot log. Today is Tuesday. Today is the second day of the week. Then you put your break again. Sorry. Then you do the same thing for Thursday and Friday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. Okay. So you'd say maybe happy Wednesday, happy Thursday. We didn't remember to, of course, why would I forget Sunday? Why? Why would I? Sunday. We rejoice in church. Okay. So now, once it is Friday or a Saturday, or okay, the reason I didn't even put, okay, let's just say Friday and Saturday is weekend, but I know Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is weekend, right? But let's just take in this case. Now, if it's not Monday, or if it's not Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then it should be weekend. So now, the same way we had else, there, we can now have something like default. Default comes last, just the same way else comes last. And this is another thing to note. You can now write else, maybe after writing if, you now write else before you now write else if. Like maybe something like this. Maybe you have if, you put your this thing, you write your logic here. Then you now come and write else. Maybe then you come and put your logic there. Then after putting your logic, you now come and write else if. Then you now come and try to put your logic here. The compiler will throw you stone. One big stone like that. This is wrong. So the else if always have to come before the else. Always has to come. So else if, okay, it's supposed to be like your else if all has to come before the else. The same way you have that in your if statement, all your cases have to come before the default case. And the default case is the case that happens once all these cases are not met, then the default case happens. And the default case is not also compulsory. You can have a switch statement that doesn't have any default case so console.log. The same way you can have if and else if statement with that else statement at the end. Okay. So you're saying happy weekend. Beautiful. So we have this, although this is actually looking long. So if we have that, it's Monday. Okay, if it's Monday, and we clear this part. So if it's Monday, okay, we run it. You see, first day of the week. If this is Tuesday, you see, now you're comparing literal values. You're not saying if it is Monday or Tuesday, or if it's Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. You're not comparing a range or like multiple values. You're comparing like exact literal values. If this was a number, maybe you say if day of the week is 2, then it should be Tuesday. Hello Tuesday, hello today is Tuesday, or something like that. Literal values, okay? Not ranges. So if it's Tuesday, Tuesday is the second day of the week. If it's Wednesday, okay, if it's Sunday, okay. If it's Sunday, we rejoice in church. And if it is Friday, oh, sorry, I'm typing it at the wrong place. So if this is Friday, okay, if this is Friday, I clear that, you'd see happy weekend. So now this works, but there's a bug. There's a bug. Now, so if I type whatever I want to type here and then I execute it, it will just tell me happy weekend, which is not supposed to be. Now, remember that you're writing programs that should not break in whatever case, right? It should be able to handle whatever error comes. So, which means our default case shouldn't say happy weekend, but our default case should rather say invalid day of a week. So, which means you're going to also have Thursday, you are going to have Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday. Okay? So that once it is Saturday, once it's Friday, it's going to tell you, oh, sorry, it's going to tell you happy weekend. Yes, Ogochukwu is asking if this is case sensitive. Very well, it's case sensitive. Your Saturday in your case and the Saturday you're trying to check and the Saturday in days of the week has to match. For example, if I remove the F, if I make the F in Friday, small letter, and I come back here and I note this, it will say invalid day of the week because this Friday starts with capital F, but your own starts with small f. So it's going to say invalid day of the week. Okay. So yeah, so yes, I said break terminates the program when the case are met. Does it mean when it's not met, it's of no effect? Or yeah, so let me explain how this actually works in practical. When you run this code, it's going to check for the case. It's going to check, is Sunday the day of the week? If Sunday is the day of the week, then it will run, we rejoice in church. Okay, now see, if I remove this break statement, it's going to run, we rejoice in church, and it's then going to also try to run the default statement. So let's see. Let me remove this break and then let me make this Sunday. Okay. So we rejoice in church. Okay. Sorry, it runs we rejoice in church, and it runs Monday, which is first day of the week, because there's no break. It doesn't break. That's why it runs this next one. But it's not supposed to be like that. Now, this is a bug in your own code, right? And you don't want this to actually happen. So the best way to avoid it is to add your break statement. So you don't have those kind of bugs. Okay. So that break statement just exits from there. Okay. So I hope I've answered your question. Okay. Cool. All right. So that's how it works. It checks for the case. If case is Sunday, prints this and then break. So break is going to prohibit it from entering Monday. Or if the case is Monday, do that. But if the case is not any of this, if the case is not included in, or if there's no case that satisfies the condition we are checking, right? Then we should just print the default, which is invalid day of the week. Okay. Damian, can you hear me well now? Is it clearer now? Is it clearer? Now, if you don't want it to be case sensitive, then the best you would do is you can actually convert days of the week to small letters and then check for the conditions. Okay. So if you do this and then we call Sunday that way. Okay. Okay, so this Sunday now has to be in small letters also. So if this was in capital letter, for example, and then your condition is in small letters, your cases is in small letters or in small letters, then you can do something like that. You can convert whatever is being sent to you to small letter, then compare it with the cases, which are also going to be in small letters. Does it make sense? Have I made that clear? Is there anybody that has any question again? Anybody? Okay. All right. Any other person have questions? Anybody? So if you are following up to these points, still indicate again, say I'm following. All right. Okay. Only two people following. Other people, disciple. Okay. I am following. Okay. Okay. Eclair finish. Eclair. All right. No problem. Okay. So you see that we are comparing neutral value with switch and case. And once we don't have any case that satisfies our, or yeah, we don't have any matching case, right? Then it is the default that is going to be executed. So if I maybe type gibberish here, I'm going to say invalid day of the week. Cool. Right. Now, we've been able to um, talk about conditional statements, switch and case, and then we've talked about if, else, and else if statements. Okay, so let's march on to something else we are supposed to do today. Okay. Uh, let's talk about. Okay, so now it depends on where you're using it. For example, right? um Someone is asking, Jasam is asking, I feel if else if and else if is better off. Yeah, because people mostly use if if and else conditional statements, okay? But then you can what the same way you write your if and else statement, what you want to write in switch statement, you can write in if and else statement. But the link difference between if and else statement and switch statement is that your switch statement is more strict in terms of it's checking a literal value. For example, if you wanted to do that results or remarks feature that we just finished showing, you want to check if the person's score is 0, you say fail. If the person's score is 2, fail. If the person's score is 3, fail. If the person's score is 4, fail. You write fail for number from 0 to 49. Fail, 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 fail. That's each of those numbers would be a case. Then once you reach 50, you now start writing good. 50, good. 51, good. If the number is equal to 52, good. If the number is equal to 53, good. You can't use that that is a less scalable and chaotic code, because it's not flexible. So if you want to make an update on the code, how do you make that update on the code? It's not going to be easy to make that update, but you see where it works. For example, you have literal values. Maybe you want to check if someone is an admin, or if someone is a user, or if someone is a rider, for example. You can use switch. You can say switch if the user's role, you pass the expression of a role in switch. Let me come back there. So let's take, maybe you say yeah, maybe you say something like role, for example. Maybe the role is admin. Maybe admin. I'm just giving an example. So you say role, for example, role. You could say something like role. Then you say, if the role is admin, do something. If the role is user, do something. If the role is guest, do something else. Or if maybe there's no case that match with what you're looking for, then you now say maybe invalid role, or invalid user, or invalid role, maybe something like that. So if the person is user, this is what will happen. If the person is guest, you're checking literal values. You're not checking a range. So, but you also know that what you're doing here, you can also do it with an if statement. But you cannot check ranges here, like maybe saying if the person is this or that, or if the person is, or if it's a range between this and the rest. You can't really do that there, here. So let's move on. No, it's not only string related. You can compare. So you can say num. You can check if maybe, let's say 1. You can check if number is 1. Let's say maybe you're, instead of using row, maybe some people do this. I hate doing it. Maybe something like row, but your role is not a string. Your role is a number. Maybe you say that 1 is for users, 2 is for admin, 3 is for staffs, something like that. You can say if role is equals to 1. If role is equals to 1, then you should do something. If role is equals to 2, you should do something else. Maybe if role is equals to 3, you should do another thing. But then if it's not equals to 1, or it's not equals to 2, and it's not equals to 3, then you tell them invalid role. Yeah, it accepts all data types. It accepts. So personally, I've not tested this with an object as a data type, or that type. I've used it with number. You can try to test this with what result will be. Okay. You can test it with. I hope you guys can still hear me. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, beautiful. Right. So you can test it with other data types, right? And then see what it's going to give you. So let's move on. What else are we checking? Okay, now we are going into arrays. So an array is just a list of elements, right, that are indexed, that are 0 indexed. Okay, and I'll explain. So let me create an array of users, for example, on an array of strings, and maybe those strings contain user on the call, the users that are on the call. So that maybe I'd say users, for example. I could say the array of strings should contain JSON, should contain Matilda, should contain who else is on this call? Kingsley, should contain Emmanuel. I need one more name, and Johnson. Why should it contain Messi? Because he's your goat, right? Okay, so um someone is asking if Messi is on the call. Anyways, we have this list of users, right? List of users, Jason, Matilda, Kingsley, Emmanuel, Johnson. Now, this is an array of strings, okay? Or you can call this a list of strings, right? Okay, sorry. And we also have Abdulatif. We also have Abdulatif. So we have these complete names, okay? And there are a couple of things you want to do or you can do here. For example, you can access each member of the user's variable. You can say console.log. For example, if you just want to print out all the users, you can just say console.log users. Okay. Script.js, and that's going to print out all the users that is there. Okay. That's going to print out all the users. But what if you want to access a particular user? Like, for example, I want to access JSON specifically. How do I access JSON? I would say I want to print user at the index of 0. Now, JSON has an index of 0. Now, there is a key value relationship here. Okay, this is the first name or the first string, or you can also call this the first element in your array or the first value in your array. So the first value in your array is the name JSON. Now this JSON has a key of 0, right? Remember that I said that arrays are indexed, are 0 indexed. That 0 index means that the first letter or the first value in that array has the index of 0 instead of 1. You know, when you're writing your normal list, you write 1, maybe your market list. 1, buy cane for my junior brother. 2, buy sharp knife. Maybe 3, buy what else? Gary. Gary is very, very important. I won't overemphasize that. But you get the point. You have a list, right? In real life, you write it starting from number 1. You write starting from your numbering from 1. But in programming and in JavaScript, the first value in your array has the index of 0. So if we execute this code, right, you'll see that JSON has the index of 0. So we are picking at the index of 0. If we say we want the value at the index of 1, okay, that will be Matilda. Mind you, this array can be an array of anything, can be an array of objects, can be an array of strings, can be an array of numbers, can be an array of anything, and it can be mixed. I could have an object here, and the next thing I have a string here, and I have a number here. Okay, it's not necessary that it has to be an array of strings totally. Okay. Okay. Now What if we wanted to print the individual values of this array? Okay, now that brings us to the topic loops. Okay, but first, before we go into the topic loops, we should be able to add people to, or add values into this array that's given to us. Okay, we should be able to add value, remove value. Okay, someone is asking, of course, they can be an array, like a 2D array. So when you have an array nested in an array, right, you have a 2D array. Okay, now you can have that, you have users here, and then you can have users dot so let's see what let's see what we want to do. First, we should be able to push users to the end of the array, like add users to the end of the array. Then we should also be able to add users to the beginning of this array. Then we should also be able to remove users from the beginning of the array, and also remove users from the end of an array. Okay. So someone is asking, an array is a list of elements that, okay, Matilda, you're asking, an array is a list of elements that are indexed, 0 indexed. Okay. Does this mean that it's okay to consider a string as an array since it has indices too? Well, so a string is an array of characters. That's what makes it different from an array. An array could shall contain like characters. Maybe I write J here, then write E here, then write S here, maybe for Jesam, just characters. But then what makes a string different from an array, right, is basically how they are being stored and referenced, and then also how they are being, their notation, how they are being written here. Of course, you won't say this is a string like this. These are an array of strings, not a string, right? A string is enclosed with either double quotes or single quotes. Okay. So I guess I have answered that question. I have answered it, right? So yeah, an array tends to behave like a string because it's also indexed. It's also 0 indexed, just like strings. But of course, the notation is what makes them different. The notation and the call on a string. For example, I can't say dot to local uppercase, or to uppercase, or to lowercase on an array. But you can do that on a string. You can say string dot to uppercase and it makes it uppercase. Okay. Cool. Okay. Uh, okay. Right. Let's continue. Okay. Now let's see how we can add to the end of this string. Right. So let's see the before and after. This would be like before, and then we will do something, and then we'll see the after effects. So we would say users dot push. Please, who should I push as a user into that array? Let me see. Adenike. I will push in Adenike as a user. Adenike. So I'll say this dot push, and then I'll write Adenike. If I didn't pronounce it well, I'm sorry. So, and then we'll say users, and then we'll see the results. Okay, so Kingsley is asking, is it safe to work with an array that contains different data types? No. Right? If you're sure that the data types don't match, then looping to, maybe to Looping through that array to maybe carry out an execution on each element of that array would be strongly disadvised. Okay, I won't advise you, I would discourage you from. So if you have an array once, okay? If you're looping through a string, right? If you're looping through a string, right, that's an array of strings, right? That would be easier for you to work with. But if there are different data types, then you might want to pick the individual data types and work on them rather than try to look through to do what you want to do. I hope I've answered you, Kingsley. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. So let's run this code that we've just written. So we want to see the before and after effects of using push. Okay, so before the push, we only had up to Abdulatif, but then after the push, we then have Adenike added to the array. Okay, now this is added at runtime. This is added at runtime. If I try to clear this code and execute it again, it's still going to give exactly the same result. Before it was it ended with Abdulatif, but Adenike was added. It won't maybe add to Adenike's because you executed it twice. That's because this execution happens and is lost also when after this this code is being executed, or after this file is being executed. Okay. So we see that push is used to add to the end of an array. So you can write that down somewhere or tweet it to someone or something, anyone. So push is used to add to the end of an array, and push accepts a value. So this value could be any data type actually. Could be string, could be it could be a string, it could be any data type. Okay, it could be any data type. Then let's look at pop. Now pop doesn't accept any argument. It doesn't accept any argument. Okay. Martins, I can't view what you've sent now. You can send it on Discord instead. I'll be able to view it from there. Thank you. So pop is used to remove the last element in the array. And in this case is Abdulatif. Sorry, Abdulatif. I'm going to actually need to remove you from that array. I hope you don't feel bad. So let's see. Let me run that code. You see that first we have Abdulatif in the first, that's before. Then after running the pop statement or the pop command or function, and then we log out the user, we then have that Abdulatif is not part of the users anymore. Right? Then let's look at how we can add and remove from the beginning instead of at the end. Okay, so that's where we have on shift. Okay, and then what do we see on shift? Inserts at the beginning of an array. Okay, Abdulatif, don't cry, don't cry, you're still part of the array. So for example, if I want to add Victor to the beginning of the array, okay, or Martins, let me use Martins. Adding Martins to the beginning of the array, I would run the code like this. I'll say on shift and then Martins. So doing that is going to So you see, the before starts with before I executed this, you see, it starts with JSON, but after that, running on shift, you see, Martins is added first before JSON. Okay. So then how do we remove the last or the first element in the array, right? So it's the opposite of on shift, which is shift. Martins don't take my position. Okay, yes. So if I wrote now, notice pop doesn't accept an argument. It is push that accepts an argument. Shift also accepts an argument. On shift accepts an argument. On shift accepts the argument of the value you want to add to the beginning of the array. Push accepts the argument, and then that argument is the value you want to add to the end of the array. Take note. Now, if we want to remove from the beginning of the array, then we will then call shift. So shift is going to remove. So remember that JSON is what is the first element in, or the first name or the first string of value in the array. But then when we run this, it's going to, this after is going to remove JSON, and then the first value will now become Matilda. So we do that. You see, so that happens. Then you can also slice. So the same way you can slice string, you can also slice arrays. So if I said dot slice, so now there are, okay, some, now this, take note of this. Some functions you call modify the array, right? And some function you call create a new array from the original array and then returns that new array. It's important for you to know the difference between both these two. Very, very important for you to know the difference between these two. One creates, right? For example, this slice now, this slice will not touch this array, but rather it will create a new array which you're supposed to print out. So this is what I will do. I would say const sliced users equals to slice user is equals to user.slice. I want to slice from the index of 4 to the end. So that after this, I would say console.log sliced users, then sliced users. So let's run it and see what is going to go on. Now, if you notice this, the before and after is actually the same, right? That should tell you that this slice did not even touch the array. It did not try to add or modify or do anything to the array. It just basically came and removed it made a copy of what it wanted from the array and saved it somewhere. And then you can assign that to a variable and then print it out. Okay? So it's important to see. It's important to see that, right? It's very important to see that. To know the difference between what method or what function is going to modify your array and what method is not going to modify your array is actually very important. Very, very important. So slicing those two out, right? I said we are slicing starting from the index of 0 of 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, then 4. So we are starting to slice from here. So we slice this name till the end. So this name and this name is going to be included in our slice. But then what if we want to slice from a point to another point? So you say, I want to slice from 2. So 0, 1, 2. From 2 to 2, 3, 4. If you said 4, it's not going to include Johnson. It's going to only return Kingsley and Emmanuel. Let's see it. 2 and 4. You see, let me comment these two. Let me comment those two so that it will be clearer for you to see. You see that now it slices, it just slices starting from Kingsley, Abby. It slices from Kingsley, but we are saying from Kingsley, we want to stop slicing at the index of 4. So it will not include Johnson because that is where we are stopping. So slice from Kingsley to the element before the index of 4, to the element before the element at the index of 4. Okay? Slice and stop there. If your knife is very sharp, you can still slice and go further. Okay? If you want to say slice to 5, for example, you're saying slice from 0, 1 to 2, 2, then 3, 4, 5. But now this 5 is not going to include Abdulatif. It's going to stop at the element before Abdulatif. So if you do that, you see, it slices it properly. So if you look at it, if you don't understand it that way, just know that where you're slicing from, the difference between these two is going to be the number of elements it's going to give you, starting from where you're slicing. So removing 2 from 5, you say 2 minus, 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 gives you 3. So once you're in your position of 2, just count 1, 2, 3. It will give you the number of elements is going to send to you back. If you use 2 here, or if you use 3, for example, so you said, so 3 minus 2 will give you 1. So it will just be at that position you're trying to slice. Okay? I hope it is clear to you guys. I hope that is clear to you guys. Okay. Is there anybody that is lost? Anybody that is lost? Anybody that is not following at this point? Okay, so Martins, where did you miss out from? Where did you miss out from? Okay, while you're typing, I'll just explain more, but just keep typing, Martins. I'm watching out for your response. Okay, so we have this. So there are others, right? There's so the ones that don't modify, the ones that modify are for example push, pop, shift, on shift, right? And splice. So there is slice and there is splice. Okay. So slice doesn't modify, but slice creates a new array. But if you try splice, now splice is going to confuse you guys. It's going to confuse you guys. It's going to really confuse you guys. So look at this splice. I'll try explaining splice once, and if you don't follow, it's fine. So splice accepts 3 arguments, right? It accepts this place you want to start splicing from. It accepts the delete count. And then it also accepts what you want to replace from where you're splicing from. I think they didn't actually include that here. Okay. So splice can be used to delete in between your array, or it can be used to remove or replace a value in your array. Okay. So let's see Just take notes. See, so the thing is, Johnson, just take note that push, pop, shift, and on shifts, right? Those four modify the main array, right? They modify the main array, and splice. Those five, push, pop, shift, on shift, splice, they modify your array. Okay. Then while the rest returns a new array, it doesn't actually modify the array that you're using them on, but it returns a new array. Okay, just know that. Okay, so we'll say we want to start splicing from the index of 1, which is Matilda. If I want to delete Matilda, I'll just say I want to delete only Matilda, which is 1. So if I do that and I run these scripts, okay, we see sliced users. So it's not spliced users that I want to see, right? I don't want to see the spliced user. I want to see the before and after effects. So let's come back here. So let's see the before and after effects. Let me clear this. Okay, so we see that in the first, before we had Matilda in the list of array, but now we have that the array doesn't contain Matilda anymore. Rather, we just have, so what we are saying here is, first, go to the index of 1. Just go there to the index of 1 first. So it goes to the index of 1 and wait. What is the next thing? How many elements do you want to delete? We want to delete only one element. Okay. Delete this one element. That's all. If I want to delete Matilda and Kingsley at the same time, I would say go to the index of 1, which is Matilda. I want to delete 2 elements, which is Matilda and Kingsley. Okay. So if I clear this my terminal and try to run it again, you see that Matilda and Kingsley, they are being deleted. Matilda, Kingsley, they are deleted. What we have now is Jesam, then Emmanuel Johnson and Abdulatif. You see? So you can use splice to delete. Then you can also use splice to replace. For example, if I want to use splice to, you can also use splice to even add. But let me use splice to replace. So I want to say, at the index of 1, which is where Matilda is, I want to delete Matilda. But after deleting Matilda, at that same index of 1, I want to add a new person. I want to call that person Victor. So I want to remove, so this is like saying, delete Matilda from the index of 1 and add Victor at the index of 1. So doing that now, we see that before that that line of code was executed, we had Jason, Matilda, and Kingsley. But after when we've executed that line of code, we have Jason, Victor, and Kingsley, no more Matilda. Okay? And I can decide to delete multiple elements and then replace them with what I want to replace. For example, if I want to delete Matilda and Kingsley and replace and then add Victor to that position, I'll say I want to delete 2 elements. Okay, then I'll do this. I'll then run that. So it will delete Matilda and Kingsley and then add Victor to that position. So I want to ask, if I want to delete, if I don't want to delete anybody, but then I want to add Victor to the index of 1, how will I do it? What is the code I'm going to write? Take, for example, I want it to be Jesam, Victor before Matilda and Kingsley. What will I write? Oh, okay. All right. So Abdulatif has said that he's thinking that in this part that I'm writing 2 or 1, that I should write 0 to delete. Okay, so Matilda is saying I shouldn't even include this one. I should write it this way, 1 and then Victor. Okay, Uh, and some other person is saying I should remove that one. I should remove anything that has to do with number and just pass Victor there. Okay. Who else has a suggestion? Who else? Who else? Is that all the suggestion? Okay. So let me say, so you're saying I should make it 0 and Victor. Nope, nope, nope. So Pelumi, that's Ayodeji Pelumi, you're saying I should put 0. Okay. So where am I putting the 0 if I'm to put 0? Okay. Well, Kingsley, the question is, if I want to add Victor to this array, maybe I want to add it to the index of 1, but I don't want to delete any other person. I don't want to add Victor to the, maybe after JSAM it should be Victor, then after Victor it should be Matilda, Kingsley, and then the rest. How do I run it? What do I write here for me to achieve that? Okay. What do I write to achieve that? That okay, I shouldn't delete anybody, but I should be able to add. Okay. So I'm still waiting for your answers. I'm still waiting for your answers. So why are you unshifting me? I'm not referring to unshift at this point. I'm referring to splice. How do I use splice to add myself before Matilda? So it should be Jesam Victor, then Matilda Kingsley. So okay. Okay. A lot of people are giving answers, and your answers are not correct. Anyways, Abdulatif is the person that got the answer correct. Okay. He said that I should put 0 for deleting. So that place that I'm supposed to. Okay. Johnson has gotten it correct. He says that I should write 1, 0, then Victor. So at the index of 1, I will put 0 here because I don't want to delete anybody. Then I'll then write Victor. So I'll do that. Then come here and run it. So seeing that here we had Jesam Matilda Kingsley, but now we have Jesam Victor as the new member of the array before we have Matilda and Kingsley. Okay. 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 Yeah, so even if you didn't get it correct, of course, you didn't know it before, but now you know how to do it, right? So this is how to do it. This is how to write that. Okay. So maybe if you have an array of users, but then you want to save, maybe you want to add a user before you save it on the database or you send it to another service. This is how you do it. This is basically how you do it. Okay. Is there any question? So if I want to make it Jesam, Matilda, then Victor before Kingsley, what do I do here? Let me ask that question. So I want it to show Jesam, Matilda, then Victor before Kingsley. What should I write? Let's see who is following and who is not following. Okay, so the hint is first we have to go to the we have to go to the index. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, Kingsley, you're correct. Matilda, you have to put Victor in quotes, and you have to have comma before the Victor in quotes, but you get the idea, you're also correct. Martins. Okay. So you just change this to 2. to change the position where you want to add that value. Okay, so if we clear here and then we try to run it again, you see that we have Jesam, Matilda, and we have Victor before we have Kingsley. Is that clear? Is that clear? Yes, no need to write one. Yeah, yeah, okay. So let me test you guys. What if I want to write Victor after Abdulatif? What am I going to write? What am I going to write here? If I want Victor to come after Abdulatif, what do you think I should write? Okay. So you can check the whole length. Okay. So let me see. Let me try this. Okay. That asked me before Abdulatif, but let's see. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me see. If I tried 6, it's going to add me. Okay. So see, it adds me after Abdulatif. So it's just for me. So what I did was go to the index of 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Uh, go to the index 6. Although there's no index of 6 actually. If you check it, there's no index of 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'm saying go to the index of 6. There's nothing at the index of 6. So I cannot even delete anything at the index of 6 because there's nothing at the index of 6. But at the index of 6, add Victor. So it goes there and then it adds my name after Abdulatif. Is that clear? Is it clear to you guys? Although you can use push, okay, and then it will work. But you see that using splice, you can do what push, pop, shift, and unshift can do. You can add at the beginning, you can remove from the beginning, you can replace, you can add at the end, you can replace in between your string. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? So if I want to even add at the beginning, what should I write? If I want to add Victor before Jesam, that's Victor here before Jesam, Matilda, Kingsley. What should I do? Martins, don't worry, you're going to get this. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. You need to rewatch this video and understand it. Maybe you rewatch the video, you pause, you test what I've done, then you play, you pause it again, you try, then you understand how it would work. Okay, so okay, 0-0, Victor. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so Kingsley got it. Kingsley was the first person to get it. Correct. So Johnson, if your zero meant if the 0 you wrote there meant 0 and 0 before Victor, then you'd be correct also. So if I said 0-0 Victor, then I clear this and come back to this point. You see that just Victor is added before Jesam. So remember that this first argument is the index where you want to start your manipulation. Then the second argument is how many elements do you want to delete, starting from that index that you are at. If you pass 0 there, then it means you don't want to delete anything. Then the next one is, what is the value you want to add, if at all you want to add any value. If you're not adding any value, then you can leave this part out. Okay, but if you're looking at adding a value to the array, that's when you would want to pass something here. And then this could actually be any data type. This could be a number, this could be an array, this could be an object, this could be a string. Okay, right. Oh, okay. So then the last but not the least thing I would want to do, which I know, of course, you guys would be the last thing we'll do in this class, is for loop. The rest of the loops, we are going to touch it in our next class. So we would have for loop. So I said that a loop is a repetition of an action. So maybe you want to, let's say you want to do something 5 times, right? You want to do something 5 times. You'd say you want to write a for loop like this. Maybe I want to tell you hello 5 times, but I don't want to write hello 5 times. I want to write it once and then it runs 5 times. I could then say for, so this is how to write a for loop. Your for loop accepts an expression. So here you write an expression. The expression usually has a start. It would have a stop where you want it to stop. And then it will have a step. That's how you want it to go right from the start to the stop. It's going, then here is where you write your statement that you want to run. Okay, so let me comment this because it will be useful as we go on. So the definition of a loop in programming terms is a piece of code that repeats an action for either a finite or an infinite number of times, or infinite number of times. So you can actually write a loop that runs forever and ever. An infinite, it will run until your PC gets out of memory and crashes, and then it starts again. Or you can write a loop that has a definite beginning and a definite end. Okay, so let's see how to write maybe a simple for loop to show hello 5 times. So we'll say for let I is just an ordinary variable, right? Johnson, I hope I answered your question. Did I answer your question? What you asked, what is your definition of loop? I hope I answered your question. I said a loop is a statement or a piece of code that repeats itself, or that is used to perform an action repeatedly. So I could say I is equals to 0. I should be less than let's say 5. So 4 is less than 5. So this would at the first, so each time a loop runs is called an iteration. Okay, each time a loop runs is called an iteration. So if a loop runs 5 times, it means it went through 5 iterations. Then if someone says an object is iterable, it means that you can loop through that object. Like an array is an iterable object, right? You can also iterate through a set. So a set too is an iterable object. So which means you can loop through a set. You can also loop through an array. Okay. So then you say I++ here. So what you're trying to say is the first iteration would have I equals to 0. So when this code runs first, I will be equals to 0. And we will check it, is I less than 5? Okay, yes, I is less than 5, no problem. We'll run the code the first time. Then after running the code, we add 1 to the value of I. Remember that I formerly was 0. Then now I will now become 1. We'll now check, is 1 less than 5? 1 is less than 5. We run the code. After running the code, we add another I again to the former value of I. Remember that the former value of I now has become 1. So if we add another 1, it becomes 2. So is 2 less than 5? 2 is less than 5. Run the code again, add 1 to I becomes 3. We'll check again. Is 3 less than 5? Yes, 3 is less than 5. Oh yeah, run the code. After running the code, add again. 1 to I, and I now becomes 4. Then we now check, is 4 less than 5? Yes, 4 is less than 5. Run the code again. After running the code, you add I again to 4. That's I will now become 5. You now check, is 5 less than 5? No. Since 5 is not less than 5, it's not going to run that code again. So we can do something like this. Console.log hello. And you can decide to log out I to see how many times it actually ran. So you see, the first iteration, I is 0. After it runs that first iteration, it adds 1 to I, and I becomes 1. It now checks, is 1 less than 5? 1 is less than 5. So for your condition to keep running, or for your loop to keep running, this condition here has to always be true. If this condition here resolves to false, your loop will stop. So if I want to create an infinite loop, I'll just say true here. If I run this code, it will run forever and ever, because true is always going to be true. It's just going to be adding 1 to I, adding 1 to I, adding 1 to I. But when it comes to check, is true, true is true. Finished. So someone is asking, what's I plus plus? I plus plus is post increment. That increments after running your code, after running the code. If I did plus plus I, then it will increase 1. It will increase I by 1 before running the code. See, if I did plus plus I and I run the same code again, let me not clear. I run the same code again. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. It's actually the same, but this one means pre-increment. This means like increment the value of I first before running the code. Then after that, we can then run this condition to check. But this other one, this I plus plus means run this code, you get, then add 1 to I before checking that if is I less than 5, you get. So that's the main difference. This one means post increment after. This one means while the other one you have plus plus I is actually pre-incrementing before. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this one, yeah, I already assigned it the value of 0. So whether you're post incrementing or pre-incrementing, the value will always start from 0. Okay. So this doesn't, whether pre-incrementing or post-incrementing, it will still give you exactly the same value. It will actually still just give you the exact same value. Okay. So let's see in theory what post increment and pre increment means. So if we said let I equals to 0, and then we try to increment it. Okay, we try to increment it. You say console.log console.log I Then we say I plus plus. Then we say console.log I, and then we console.log I again. Let's just console.log I 3 times. Let's execute this. 0, 1, 1. Okay, but let's try pre-incrementing. Well, it still gives the same value. 1, 1, 1. Okay. Mm. Right, but it's still the same. That's 0. Then increment after. Okay. Okay. Wait. I think I know if I did plus plus I. This where it would actually now look different. Sorry. So let me run that script again. So it increments after this particular line. After this particular line, it increments it. But then let me use plus plus I. You see the difference now? This one, when we are logging out I plus plus, or sorry, plus plus I, we are saying pre-increments before you even execute this line of code. That is before you even add this I, that's you add 1 to the II. Okay, that's increment it before you even execute this code. But when we now say I plus plus, we are saying run this code, but after when you've run this line that has this I plus plus, after you run this line, right? Subsequent lines, that's before the subsequent line of code, add 1 to I. Does it make sense to you guys? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to you guys? Or who is not following? So this one is okay. Okay. This is saying, this is simply saying, okay, this is pre-increments. This one is pre-increments. Okay. Now, either ways, as far as this line of code is executed, the next line of code will have the updated value, right? If you're incrementing, the next line of code will have the updated value. But this I plus plus itself, right, at this point is saying, oh, okay, you want to log I out. Before logging I, increase the value of I by 1. Before you even log it out, just increase the value of I by 1. See it now. Let me clear this. Let me clear this and run it. Before you even log I out here, increase the value of I by 1. So it's going to, so the compiler will look at this and be like, okay, this is saying before executing or before logging it out, before logging the value of I out, increment it by 1. You understand? Just increment it by 1 before you even log it out. Okay? But when you say I plus plus, this one is now called post increment. Post increment is saying you want to increase I by 1, but log out the value that I has now before incrementing it. Guys, execute it. Then after executing it, after executing it, you add 1 to the I. Okay. After executing it, you add 1 to the I. So that's why if we now execute this one, you see that the value of this I++ is still 0, but in the next line of code, it now becomes 1. That's because we are saying this plus plus here is telling the compiler, just log out the value of I first. That's the former value of I before you increase it. Just log the value first. Then after when you log it out, anyway, we are going to use it again. We are going to increase it before using it. You get, does it make sense to you guys now? Does it make sense? Do you guys understand it now? So, but whether I use post increment or pre increments, the value of this I will finally become 1. The value of this I will finally become 1. Okay? The final value of this I will become 1. That's the main difference between post increment and pre increment. Okay? All right. So that's it. So we have this 4, right? So we are saying once the value is 0, right? We check, is 0 less than 5? Now, this post increment is saying, okay, after executing this thing, increase the value of I by 1. Okay? That after it touches this line of code, it will still use the value of I as 0 before incrementing it. Okay? But either ways, this what I just explained to you before applies here, but it doesn't affect the value of I at the end of the day. So whether I add I++ or plus I, it will always start from 0 and end at 4. Okay? So I'll run this. Okay? So it starts from 0, ends at 4. So I guess we should stop here. By next class, I'm going to explain do while loop and while loop and what's the difference between both of them, right? And how while loop differs from for loop. Okay, so I guess we've done a whole lot in this class, right? So in the next class, we are going to go over these things. Is there anybody that has any question? Anybody that wants to ask any question? Okay. Any question? I'm still waiting. Is there any question? Is there anybody that got confused along the way? Anybody? Yeah, okay. Yes, Matilda, we will go back to functions. So while I use the function, I will still explain them to you. I'll explain functions to you again in our subsequent class, so it will stick very well and you would understand how to use it. Okay? So because I know the last class, right, wasn't, it was affected by some technical issues. Okay, but apart from that, okay, I would always explain functions for you guys to see and then understand it. All right. Any other question? So in the absence of any other question, I would like to say thank you very much for coming out to attend today's class, and I'll catch you in the next class. Bye-bye.